Hello there, sex fiends out there. Troy to the max extreme here.
And Ghost Hunter Dave.
And this is IMPERIUS REX.
That's right, welcome back to the sex dungeon. Look at all this stuff. Do we actually own this? Who knows? Well, I mean, we don't own it. Someone.
It's a rental.
Yes. Yep. Today we're talking about a maybe lesser known title, but seemed very appropriate for the topic at hand.
Yeah.
Joe Casey and Piotr Kowalski. Sex. So, Troy, let's talk about sex.
All right.
This is an odd, yet I thought kind of refreshingly unique book that focuses on the other end of the superhero spectrum. This is what happens when Batman and Robin hang up their capes and just try to cut it back in regular life.
Yeah. And a lot of that, too. Because it kind of harkens back a little bit to what they did previously, but not hardly enough you can get a good grasp of it.
No.
Like, was he, like, a good Batman? Because he seems like a bit of a prick in this.
Oh, yeah, with that douchey little chin patch.
Well, what are you doing with that?
Oh, God. When was this written? In the 90s? There's also lots of sex, but not tons. At least not compared to everything else that we've been reading for this.
Right.
It actually comes off a little bit more tame than the others, so stay tuned. But what do you think? What do you think of this pitch?
I think the title of the book is more or less just to get eyes on it. Because I think the title has nothing to do with the source material of the book at all. In fact, I think if any of the sex stuff that's sprinkled in there was taken out, it wouldn't change the story whatsoever.
Not at all, no. And I feel like it might get more readers because I didn't know what it was about. I just got it on a whim because it was like one of those cheap $10 image trades. Yep. And I'd heard of it, but I had no idea what it was. And when I finally heard what like the story was after I'd bought maybe 4 volumes of this, and it's been out for like 5 years. That the story is basically like, what if Batman retired and did all this? Yeah. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Why didn't they ever like promote it as that?
I have no clue. Because I would have been way more on board with that kind of a story. It's kind of like almost like an Irredeemable or something like that, where it's like another side of like the superhero culture. Yeah. Where like Irredeemable is like this guy that goes way off to evil, and this guy is like a Batman that's like, I'm just gonna wean myself off and like maybe do like some 9-to-5 work here.
See if I can cut it as a businessman. Which he really can't. No. He's pretty terrible at running his company.
Yeah, just sits there in his boardroom, zoning out. His assistant bitching at him that he's zoning out.
Yeah. Just so we don't have to keep calling him Batman throughout this whole thing. The Batman analog in this is a wealthy orphan named Simon Cook. He has his own Alfred with a now deceased woman, Quinn, who's kind of the mastermind behind his whole crusade, we find out as it goes along. Yeah. He also has his own Robin, filled by a young kid, Keenan, young hero hoping to clean up the streets, along with the Armored Saint is actually what Simon's alter ego is. Right, yeah. And as you pointed out, I think one of the most interesting, deliberate things about this book is you never see the Armored Saint full on. Right. You get flashbacks, and in those, he's usually obscured or in the shadows. Right. So there's been like 35 issues of this, and we have yet to see him in his full Armored Saint glory.
And I don't even think you really need to.
No.
But as interesting as the first trade is, like, I wasn't necessarily hooked. I was kind of confused when I got to it at the first trade as to why. Yeah. Why it's titled this, why it needs all of the sexual nature in this book that does nothing for it. Like, it'd be way more interesting if it was titled anything else.
Retired Batman.
Yeah. Yep.
So my thoughts on the sexual nature of this is that Simon Cook has spent his entire best years of his life, the times when any normal person would be out playing the field,
right?
You know, putting some notches in the bedpost,
right?
He spent that time fighting crime,
right? Cracking skulls.
That's right. Instead of knocking boots. So that was like his form of sexual gratification,
right.
I guess.
His a release
of
some sort.
And once he hung that up, he had to like go into doing what normal people would do to get that same thrill.
Yeah.
But
well, I guess I'll try this sex thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I've read 35 issues of this. I don't know if he's a virgin or not.
I don't know.
Because he doesn't ever have sex in this.
No.
I don't know if he did before he became a crime fighter.
Who knows?
So he's very, like, repressed.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the whole point. Like, there's all this sex going on around him.
Yeah.
But he is so, like, bottled up because he's been, like, getting it out as Batman.
Right.
That he doesn't have, like, any release. He's just, like, you know, set to blow in more ways than one.
Yeah. But then he also, there's, like, a Catwoman analog in this as well.
Yeah, Annabelle... I have no idea how you pronounce her last name. Like, Legreves?
Sure. But, like, even...
Catwoman. I don't know if the camera audio will pick that up, but...
There was an audible meow.
Right on cue.
But you would think that... I guess if you're taking from, like, other... Like, Batman and Catwoman comics, they have a bit of a tumultuous relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially now.
Oh, yeah.
Granted, this was written years before that.
Tried to make an honest woman out of her.
But you would think that sometime, like, during their little soirees, that they'd be maybe getting, you know...
I think it was always maybe just the tease that kept him going with her.
It was the chase.
The chase,
okay.
Yeah. And she has since gone on. She's also hung up her cat clothes. Started a cat house.
That's right.
A brothel.
Yep.
And she's like, she's doing well for herself.
Yeah, quite well for herself.
Except I love this ongoing plot line where she wrecked her eyesight.
I
with,
like that too.
This infrared goggles that she would wear.
Yeah.
And now, like, she's almost blind and she has to wear glasses and hates it.
Yeah. Even though everyone says they look great, which they do.
They do. She looks refined. But, yeah, there's lots of little things like that where if you don't have any experience with all these years of superhero comics, I don't know if it would be quite as much of a payoff.
Right.
But getting these little nods to things where you don't need the book to spell them all out. You're just like, okay, yeah, I get the genre.
Yeah.
So it's a nice little interesting take on that. Where, like, yeah, I guess, you know, crime fighting would kind of wreck you after so many years. Or maybe you wouldn't have a chance to get your rocks off because you're always, you know, chasing burglars on the rooftops.
Yeah, very well said. They even allude to other, like, villains in this as well. Which are also, like, analogs for, like, other Batman villains. Yeah. Some of them kind of combine to make one.
Right. So kind of the main villain of this run is the Old Man. Who is... I don't believe he's really old. I think he's someone that has, like, a degenerative disease that makes him age rapidly.
Yeah.
And he's kind of on his way out, and he's going crazy because he knows he's at death's door. So he's just, like, he's going to burn the city down with him.
Right.
And he is awful.
Yeah, he's terrible.
Yes.
Even from his, like, first introduction with his two goons, he's just banging that chick, like, mercilessly with, like, the two goons, like, having a full-on conversation with him while he's doing it.
Oh, yeah. He's a multitasker. That's how he's got this firm handhold on the city. He gets a lot of shit done.
Yeah, and then just blows her head off.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, holy shit.
Yep. Yes. There's also the Alpha brothers, who are two incestuous up-and-comers who are also kind of trying to make a play for the city, trying to kind of pick up the Old Man's territories.
Yeah. I actually like those two quite a bit. I wish they were in it a little bit more.
As the book goes on, they get bigger roles.
Okay.
We should mention, I'm up to speed on it. You read the first trade.
Yeah.
And we were cramming issues before this.
Yeah.
And you were kind of like, how much of this do I have to read? And honestly, full disclosure, just the first volume at this point. Like, I've read the subsequent 5 volumes after that, and this is my major complaint is not a lot happens big picture wise.
Yeah.
There's little things that kind of sprinkle in, but nothing is resolved. at this point.
Hmm.
And I think this would be a really hard book to read month to month because it is such a long-form story to the point where it's like, is this even a story? Or is this just like, just showing us things that are happening? Which I guess you could argue is a story, but it's just not as tight as I think it should be. And if it was, I would say this is a great book. But it is so drawn out without any payoff. That I would have a hard time recommending it. I think the premise alone is great, but it never really delivers on anything, at least not yet. So much to the point where they pulled it from being a monthly book, and the last volume they released as a straight graphic novel.
Okay.
Volume 6, I think, just went straight to a collection. Which also reads much better, as you would imagine. But when that happened, I got to that, I'm like, oh shit, is stuff finally gonna happen? No.
So the book is just edging you.
Yes.
Until you have like a big, huge pop.
It is. It's a 6-volume tease right now, without any signs of like wrapping up.
Huh.
So I don't know. Like, I don't want to wait that long for this, because this has been going for 5 years, 6 years.
Yeah.
And if I was reading this month to month, I'd want to shoot myself, I think. And now knowing that it's going to be like a year between these volumes, where still, like, I don't know what's really going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm like, God, I guess wait it out and see how it all wraps up, if it's worth it.
Right. Even from the first trade, I could see we're like, oh, I really kind of want to follow this and this and this. But even at the end of the first trade, I'm like, okay, well, I already heard from you. It's like, just read the first one for the show.
Yeah.
Like,
if you want to go on, go ahead.
And I'm like, oh, that doesn't really give me like high hopes to like put in the time to do the other ones, unless I hear it's got a great payoff somewhere.
Yeah. There's some good issues. I think there's one issue that gives you a full flashback. Like, the whole issue is a flashback to him fighting crime.
Okay.
There's other characters that get developed. Some of his villains, like the prank addict, who is the Joker facsimile.
The prank addict.
I know. And he ends up being really interesting as this goes on. He's almost tied to this like ancient cult that has this kind of crazy figurehead who is almost like a Ra's al Ghul type of character.
Okay.
And he's been kind of like shaping the prank addict through like mental and physical torture so he can go back to Satellite City, which is the Gotham City analog, not like a Radio Shack knockoff. So he's gonna go and basically just disrupt it and burn it to the ground, and he's kind of seen as the Armored Saints equal arch nemesis. Yeah, so you do get all these parallels.
Okay.
And the way they put it together here, it's like, oh yeah, that's kind of a cool take on it.
Okay.
While still being very much the Joker, but also as like a crazy homeless man.
Right.
And then they also introduce a like Poison Ivy type of girl. Okay. Who's really creepy goth looking, and when she has sex with people, they like shrivel up and die. Cool. So she ends up being like one of the old man's go-to like henchmen. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Ex Machina. How it was kind of like a retired real-life superhero. Yeah. And you got kind of caught up in the day-to-day tedium. Yeah. But at least in that, it was interesting. Yes. And it had all these, like, citywide scandals and things that you're like, oh, that is interesting. But this, which is very much like, what if Batman grew up and decided to run his company? It's like, well, that isn't interesting. Like, boardroom stuff isn't. And that there is a reason why, you know, that age-old question, why doesn't Batman use his power and everything to, like, help the world? Why doesn't he become a humanitarian instead of beating people up? Right. It's like, because no one would read that, because it's boring as shit. And unfortunately, that's how some of this is. And it's not all of it. Like, it's not all boardrooms, but they sprinkle them in, and it's just kind of like, what is the payoff
When
here?
they did sprinkle those in, I was about as bored as he was in, in those boardrooms. He's just like zoning off, saying he's listening, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm reading it. Yeah. I read the words. Yeah. But it's mostly just like kind of that weird like background boardroom bureaucratic mumbo jumbo jargon talk. So it's like you don't really have to read it really. Right. It's just there, and he's just You just have to know time is passing and he's slowly sleeping with his eyes open.
Yes, yep. Yep. So, on the Imperious sexy sex scale, how sex would you rate this?
I would rate this 2 sex.
2 sex?
Yeah.
All right. I would rate it a solid 2.5 sex.
Okay.
Yep.
Very
All
good.
right. There you have it.
Very good. So that is Sex by Joe Casey. Tell us what you think about this book. Are we wrong?
Yeah.
Are you
Is anyone
really into
reading
it?
this?
Yeah.
Because it's been out there for a while.
Yeah.
And it's still being published, which is crazy.
Yep. I don't know if it's crazy.
I mean, for what it is, I'm amazed it's gone this long.
Yes.
I guess.
Right. I can see that.
All right.
Yeah. You really turned me around.
Yeah. It's not bad. I'm not saying it's a bad book.
Just stop
I'm just
before
saying
you
it's
put your
such-
foot in your mouth.
I'm saying it's such an odd concept. I'm amazed people are reading it enough to continue. Now, I'm going to cut all that.
Great. How many sexes do you give this book? Let us all know in the comments down below. But until next time, we have more sexiness for you. I've been Troy to the Max, XXX Stream.
Ooh, and I'm just regular PG-13 Ghost Hunter Dave. Trying to get a wider audience.
Very good. And we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Hold it the whole time.
I'll hold it.
Good.
The whole time.
Thanks. If you can just hold this the whole time.
I'll put it down here. Sorry, because I don't want to hold this down.
Oh my god. Reset.